The Sentinel Mindset.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I have a very special episode today that I want to speak about. Something that actually happened to our organization this past week, or actually I would say late last week. And as soon as I heard it, it bothered me greatly. And I'm going to explain to you very briefly what happened. So in the security sector, it's very common that, at the end of a shift or during a shift, that you are reporting incidents that happen in real time. You're documenting in your memo book. And of course, the reasons why you do this is to ensure that, if things do go to court or if they get into any sort of a legal aspect, that you have the proper documentation. You have a record of what happened on shift. Now, one of our clients called us out last week because they were going through the reports that we submit on a daily basis, and he was looking at one specific one that just did not add up, did not make sense to the standard. And it actually quite bothered him, and the reason why is because it could have opened up quite a bit of liability. Now, for us as an organization, we will always lean into our faults so we can make things better. And as soon as we got this information back, I thought we cannot continue another day unless this is addressed. We must take immediate action immediately. And what I did was I contacted one of the most professional individuals in the security industry who has been a massive impact to our organization, a massive impact to the security organization, and that is Steve Summerville. Steve, president of Stay Safe. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Constantine. How are you?
Amazing. I really want to thank you for coming down here, Steve. And I thought the reason why I wanted to share this story, but also talked about what we did with you, is because it could be a big wake-up call to any other organization that might be going through this, or for individuals or organizations that might not see the significance of reporting. Also, we recently had you on the show with a lawyer.
That's right.
That's right, a prosecutor. And he was actually highlighting the reasons and the importance of documentation.
Absolutely.
So
that was Mr. David Shellnut.
That's right, David Shellnut, and he was fantastic. Yeah. So first of all, welcome to the show, Steve. Thank you for coming down on such short notice.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to maybe if you can just kind of explain, the significance of reporting. Now, you actually brought up earlier when we were talking in the green room of a situation that you're going to be dealing with on Sunday.
Right.
I thought that would be a good kind of like tie-in to where we're going to be going with this episode.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, today as we film this podcast, it's a Friday. A little less than 3 days, I'll be flying up to Kenora, Ontario for a criminal trial. This criminal trial is speaking to an OPP police officer that is being charged with assault. And the issue, some of the factors as to why he was criminally charged, was based initially on his report. And the report, according to prosecution, to the Crown Attorney's Office, lacked sufficient detail or enough detail to identify or illustrate the resistance that was being provided to the officer, and specifically why the officer chose the path or course of action that he did, which is now deemed to be criminal. So we look at content and context. This needs to be captured in the report. We'll get into the specific moments as to why we were brought together with your team, your teams that work within live events. Mm-hmm. But here is the power of detail. So let's just talk about the area of detail. And unfortunately, as human beings, we get a lot of stimulus, we get a lot of information, and at times we need to actually exercise, take a chance to exercise and to articulate on paper specifically what we saw, what we thought, and ultimately what we did and what the end result might have been. Mm-hmm. Through osmosis, we learn report writing through others, or we learn it through experience. But until you're actually taken through a codified program, to be given an opportunity or experience to challenge yourself, is what we did with your teams. This is extremely relevant. So for this particular officer, his ability now to come back after the fact and say, well, here's what happened, here's my account for it. What I anticipate he'll likely be challenged is, well, you did not include that in the report at the time. Therefore, we're really suggesting deceit or dishonesty, and the only reason you're offering this explanation now is because you're now facing criminal charges.
Right.
So we'll keep you posted as to how that particular situation goes. Getting back to your teams and why we gathered here just 3 days ago, we gathered collectively and provided what we call a tactical writing seminar. We dealt with experienced staff. They're dealing with live events. And some of the areas in live events where alcoholic beverages are served or sold or provided is this area of ejection. And that is forcibly removing people or hopefully creating a voluntary ejection where people, due to overconsumption, are asked to leave a licensed premise. Mm-hmm. There requires documentation for that. We need to protect the entity, the venue, ourselves, and to show that we took reasonable steps steps to protect all patrons. We call that a duty of care component. Mr. Shelnut spoke about that in his podcast on mitigation. And what we need to practice, of course, is that the reports we submit do provide enough detail or content that a person who represents your client says this makes sense. Now, there was concern and allegation that caused your client to go dig in a little bit to your report, pull it out, and they were not satisfied with the content that was provided by your staff.
That's right.
So this creates a bit of a challenge for us because we all think we can communicate. We all think that we have the ability to jot down a scenario, and reasonably so. But until we really start to learn how to do it at a professional level, that's the challenge. That's the issue.
And I think also why it's so important is the concern is that, as you said, if this goes to court and now we have to draw on information, you've now just created massive exposure for us, right? As entities. So to me, like, this is why it's so important. So Steve, what we did was we had a conversation about this.
We did.
And then your suggestion was, look, we need to put something in place ASAP where we can get this rectified as an opportunity for a refresher. Now, we do reporting workshops with our individuals here, but at the end of the day, things can slip through the cracks like this one did. And this was something that we wanted to make sure that did not kind of follow suit. So can you speak a little bit about what that day entailed like?
Sure.
Because what I can tell you on the back end, the end of the day, the outcome, many people left feeling like revived, rejuvenated, recharged, and very excited to go back and document, which is something that people don't really look forward to.
Great feedback. I appreciate that. But what we did, we started off with the power of documentation, and we started to talk about the requirements, then the legislative requirements, certainly as a security professional, to document an incident. And we also look at the client's needs, certainly with alcohol management. If there's an ejection, that needs to be documented. That can be reviewed by any entity, the Alcohol Gaming Commission. It could be by litigation counsel. In this particular case, perhaps the complaint actually from the patron that was removed, perhaps against their will, from a particular venue or live site. So we need to understand exactly what it is the guards saw, powers of observation, if you will, and what suggested that this particular patron was intoxicated. There's signs of impairment, if you will, and the steps that security took to remedy that, and then to remove them safely from the venue. And there's another dynamic that's also required that should be reportable, which is the areas, what steps do we do to take them, get them home safely?
Right.
Whether it be via cab or Uber, or take an area where you're with a sober friend. Maybe I need to call a family member for you. Just make certain, because I think you can understand the horrors associated to allowing a person to wander down the street, to be struck by a vehicle, or to succumb to some form of injury. And let's face it, if a person in a licensed premise becomes intoxicated, well, that's usually being on our profit margins. In other words, under our watch, your alcohol management system failed.
Right.
And as a result of that, we need to take the steps now to make certain that patron is safe. So we talked about detail and what should a report consist of, and we gave some examples on the screen. And I don't want to give too much away, especially for people that might participate in this, but we created a little bit of an innocuous scenario where one of your staff members kindly participated, and he deliberately, it was specific to interrupt the session. I said, "Oh, just your indulgence for 1 second, ladies and gentlemen." And he came up. We had a very, very quiet conversation. He passed me a document, piece of paper, and then he walked away. And then I started getting to class, and I said, "Oh, stop for 1 second, please. Did everybody just see that interaction I had at the front of the room?"
Yeah, I actually don't know what happened here, so I'm very curious right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I won't tell you. I'll just mention I named Gary.
So
now you have an idea who it was.
Right.
Did everybody see an individual at the front of the room? Yeah, we did. All right, good. So then that's when we passed out reports.
Yes.
So let's make this a bit more explicit. This particular person now just committed an assault months ago. And if there's a scenario, I need you, please, to provide me an accurate description of whom you just saw. To the point where if you need to call 911 or police had to search an area or a venue or an access egress point, they can identify the person you just saw. This, by the way, it wasn't at the start of your shift. This was hours ago. This was roughly 90 seconds ago through powers of observation. So it was interesting. People made a really strange face because they realized now the accountability factor, because it's one thing to see something, it's another one to observe it. So what we started to talk about, oh, by the way, your description should also include height, weight, hair, description of the hair. Were they or were they not wearing glasses, clothing, footwear? What was it that you saw or did not see in the person's hands? What was it that was passed off to me or not? And great, because by the way, I said to them, the success of your career really falls and rests upon your ability to report. And I made this up as I went along, but in failure to meet our standard in report writing, your current service with this company may become, disputable. It may become into doubt. So no pressure there, and off you go. So it's interesting, when we started talking off, we went from an average height of about 5'6" to 6'3". Those people in the room. I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah.
I saw the roots. Body weight from about 140 to 230.
Okay.
We had blue shirts, green shirts. We had a T-shirt. It was actually a long blue sweater. Was there any markings on it? Nobody caught that. I'd say half the room caught the fact that the gentleman was wearing glasses. Nobody noticed that. Was there any facial hair? Or was it like a scrubble, I guess, what you call it, or scruff?
Right.
Was he wearing slacks, track pants, jeans? All those three were described. We had black footwear. We had dress shoes. We had right running shoes. One person said that they had some sandals on. It was interesting.
Wow.
What he passed off to me was a yellow piece of sticky paper. And we had a white document. We had something written on it. It was a black document. A few people said, no, nothing was passed off. I asked which hand was it used to pass that off. So that was it. So we had quite an interesting moment and take up. So here's the thing. I'm trying to articulate you as a professional security officer who has unique powers of observation compared to the competition or members of the public. What happened and where did it go?
Right.
So that started the program.
Interesting.
That started the program. And this was innocuous, by the way. There was no violence. There was no allegations of misconduct. We just talked about your basic, simple powers of observation. I put up my hand. Who did well with that? Nobody put up their hand. Who would like to do better? All hands went up. That's what launched the program.
Right. See, I'll tell you this. I know you've done this before. Do you usually see the same kind of results?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, I do.
So it's not just a Sentinel.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good.
Yeah,
No,
you were fine.
Yeah, no, for sure. Look, the reason why I think that's important is because, again, every detail matters in what you see, and how accurate are you to what you're observing.
Well, yeah. And I said, you can understand, hopefully you can understand, if I'm driving down the street or running around or walking around a venue looking for someone who's described as 5'6" to 6'2", I'm looking for a 140-pounder or 230-pounder. What do you want me to approach? What is a suspect? Mm-hmm. And by the way, when people describe to you a suspect, the person often describing something that happened to them or a crime, keep in mind they probably had the same powers of observation as what you did during this exercise. So be open-minded.
Okay, so the power of reporting, so significant that it can determine how successful you can be if things did get legal in a discovery phase or a court phase.
Oh, yes.
Now, recently, we released a video, which we're going to release again, where we had another test subjects of Sentinels, where we recreated an actual situation that happened. And then the requirement that you gave them was, go and document this.
Yes.
Okay? And all these Sentinels went out and they started documenting what happened, what they saw. The next day, they came into a discovery/court setting that we recreated, where they had the opportunity to be interrogated by the one and only Steve Summerville.
We had a discussion. As I say to my son a lot, we had a discussion. And what you're going to see in this video is that every single one of them was basically taken out, so much so that some even had their answers changed.
Introducing the Protect the Protector program with Stephen Summerville. In an effort to prepare our EP agents for the battle beyond the battle, a hard skill training primed our EP team before being surprised with a simple scenario. The next week, all were subpoenaed to appear in a mock court discovery.
I wasn't negligent, but I didn't put him in.
Well, hold on for 1 second here. You're telling me that my client created a threat, and you did a complete, fulsome report to the best of your ability, did you not?
To the best of my ability.
You know what I'm going to suggest to you, sir? That you are now saying that my client threatened your client to be convenient for you to justify the actions he used against him. You broke my client's arm, and now you're suddenly materializing this concept of threat that never appeared in your notes.
I can't answer that question.
How is that competent? You say you're a competent professional. Is it competent to lay your hands on the public yet you don't know your authorities?
I don't know how to answer that question, sir.
Well, do you feel you're competent? A competent person should be able to answer that question?
Well, the way you're asking it, I don't know.
Should a competent person, do you think, sir, requires a degree or a law degree to be able to say if you put your hands on somebody, what's your authority?
Well.
So you see the placement, you push them against the wall.
I didn't.
Well, how did you throw himself against the
I
wall?
blocked him.
You blocked him.
I did. I used.
You're a master of semantics.
Can
my
you
client.
see that I went to crack his
Did
arm?
you offer
Doesn't
any
show that.
assistance? Are you going to answer
No, I
the
did
question?
not. No, I did
you
not.
didn't think it
No,
was
I did
carrying
not.
on? Yet you didn't provide that detail in your report.
No, I did not.
Why would you do that? Or not do that?
At that time, it was something that I recall later on.
What did you say to my client at the time you physically touched them? So that's an omission?
Yeah,
Third such omission.
sure.
Is that competent to exclude that relevant point to a report?
No, it's not competent at all.
Yet you've identified you're a competent security guard. 15 years in this industry.
Yeah.
What did you say to my client at the moment, the tipping point you were applying force?
I didn't say it.
You didn't say anything.
No.
Do you realize my client suffered a broken arm? As a result
I didn't
of
know
this?
this.
You didn't realize that?
Not at the time.
I'm going to take you to your report, sir. I instructed my client to keep moving as I restrained the individual who claimed his arm to be broken.
Yeah, it is.
So you weren't lying when you submitted this report.
No, no.
So you're lying now. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Are you suggesting this report, this is false?
No, that's correct.
So what you've said under oath right now is false?
Yeah, it is false, actually, yeah.
Wow. Are you familiar with the word perjury, sir?
I am.
What is perjury?
Lying under oath.
Lying under oath, which it appears you've just done. You realize there's a criminal consequence for that, correct?
I do, yeah.
Now, with that said, Steve, that as an example, how common can someone argue and say, like, jury duty? I mean, I may get called, I may never get called, I'm not even going to worry about it. Should someone have that attitude when they're performing the job of anything to do in law enforcement, security, where they got to report? Should they have the attitude that they're never going to get called in for court? Why even bother?
Great point. We also get very complacent. Some people get very complacent in their duties. You know, you're a new hire. I've been working for you for Sentinel for maybe a couple of days, and I want to impress all people. There's a power of attention to detail. And that would be my first report, my second report. Then you start to find out the frequency of reports. And what we do, kind of look at your watch or look at the time on your phone, and I want to speed it up. It's the end of the day. I might be getting pressure. Let's go, we're wrapped up. And you find the quality of reports start to deteriorate. They start to come back off. The detail starts to become less, a couple of quick lines. And, you know, depending on the environment, you don't know what you don't know in terms of something going awry or having the potential to spill back, i.e. litigation or allegations of misconduct. We spoke about allegations of misconduct to make this real. And what I then offered, how did you do with the simple powers of observation with a person that was doing nothing? Now you're witnessing a fight. You're witnessing an altercation. Let's just make this a bit clearer. Your staff members, your colleagues, your peers are involved in. So from a sidebar, I'm now asking you to give me an account as to what you saw. Where do you start with that? So if I see two of your sentinels starting to struggle with a patron or an individual, and a person starts to have to apply force professionally, legally, ethically, and morally, what do you start to, how do you break it down? And we started off with a report. We did a recent podcast too, what we call Maple Leaf Takedown. It's an arrest by security working at MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, with a patron during a Maple Leaf game. So we showed that, and ignoring what the broadcaster says, I'd like you to describe what you saw, but where do you start? So the first attempt wasn't too fruitful. Then we gave some tips. I had to go back to be able to redo a product with a different set of eyes. And what we did this time, okay, let's just break it down. Let's just talk about how many participants there were, where they were standing in relation to each other, and what information, if any, did you have to start this particular process. And then you might want to start to notice what was being said or not. And then you might want to look at the responses that were provided or not. Should that not be included in your report? All hands went up. Why wasn't it? And a couple of people kindly said, well, yeah, I've heard that before, but I forgot. Okay, I'll accept that, but it needs to be applied. Next, the roles. What was the resistance and what was the response? How did you engage? And what a process. Was there a securing of an arm? Did you do a takedown? Did the person fall or slip or lose their balance? Did you hold them down? Where were you holding them down? Where were the hands placed? Was there any hard techniques applied, knee strikes or palm heel strikes? How many? Where were they applied to? In this particular video, there's an allegation with the Maple Leaf takedown. There was an allegation of security placing his knee on the subject's neck and or head area.
Right.
How many people noted that? Well, not many people noted that. Even though the broadcaster from the media said that was an allegation, you didn't hear it, so you weren't looking for it, right?
Right.
So that sort of thing. So we had a chance to run it again, and then we started to break it down from those components. That's the level of detail that you require. And where it even makes it far more intrusive is then that when you're involved, if you're the one applying force, where you're the one that's applied a technique. What did you say? What did you not say? Why did you say that? What was your anticipation? If I holding you down, sir, and administering force to trying to get your hands behind your back, where at any time did you tell the person, A, they're under arrest, and B, that you need them to comply? And if so, how do you need them to comply? I need you to put your hands behind your back. Because without that context, people don't know what you're thinking. The person on the ground likely doesn't know what you're thinking. And the scrutiny that goes into the video, which is often captured by cell phones,
Right.
which you don't have any control over. It's not like at the end of the day you might be able to look at your site's CCTV video. But somebody's cell phone from different angles are showing perhaps a clearer picture. And you need to be able to explain and justify and articulate. We talk about CYA. Remember what CYA
Yes.
represents?
Yes, it's keep.
This also might be edited, but
exactly.
can
you articulate?
there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Always throwing me off.
Yeah, you people, how can he do that in custody?
exactly.
Why not,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what friends do.
That's right.
But, people did say, well, just cover your ass.
Yes. Yeah.
And one lady in your group said, oh, I do financial management. Well, then cover your assets.
Right. Exactly.
Because we're talking about litigation, and
Yeah.
she got that message. So that's the scope of it. And then we talked about a perspective is to write it from one. How many security guards did you see? Well, they only saw two. Put it back on the screen. What about the third person at the feet? We didn't see that. Why did you not see that? How could you not see it? You weren't looking for it. We get so zoned in to looking at the picture, you don't try to get a bit of a wider view. So this was a unique experience. Actually, 3 days ago, we wrote 4 different reports. All the details. The final version, with all due respect, was acceptable. And I believe after that level, you don't judge a program at its merits in the first little bit. It's
Right.
the end of the day.
That's right.
And you walk people through little steps to give them an experience and to add on to that experience. And I don't think before we judge people's abilities to write, we can all write a written language, but not with the level of detail through a first responder's perspective.
That's right. That's right. And there is an art to it. You know what I mean? It's not something you just, as you said, you just start writing. You got to be able to answer all the questions: who, what, where, why, when. All those things have to come into place. Chronological orders, and you have to be very detailed. Like little details, like for example, saying something like, the weather was rough and it was a male, for example. What kind of weather was it? These little things can lose a case in court.
Absolutely.
It
certainly can, especially if you find, and I sort of said this during the program, I said, have you ever seen a movie, motion picture, and seen the book and find out how they don't mesh up?
Right.
Right? Now, obviously, the books are far, far greater detail, but when there's a disconnect with the video, when you're suggesting that you were assaulted, there's nothing on the video to show that. Or if you struck a person, I'm talking about not through any criminal intent, I lash out and I maybe hit you, striking the shoulder and try to secure your arm, but you didn't record that in your notes. Why not? And what you'll be targeted for is being deceptive or being dishonest or being discredible. And you deliberately omitted that piece of information because you didn't wish to come under scrutiny. Now, let's take you back to the video that you indicated will be re-released. We call that Protect the Protector.
That's right.
And the reason we do that is we gave people a scenario, and I would think you'd agree, all the participants were senior security.
That's right.
Probably easily each one of them minimal 10 years
That's right.
in the field.
That's
so these
right.
aren't new hires. And I'm not suggesting there's anything with intellect or desire.
Right.
But usually you get 10-year veterans. You would think, you would think that there is a level of experience about into all aspects, including report writing. So they were given the opportunity to write a report from a physical experience. And that's what I told your group on Tuesday. That's where we're going next. It's the one thing to write something you're not involved in, but give you a physical experience. Well, likely there will be force required, or at least need to de-escalate. And then you write it up. And then we'll come back and we'll talk. And what I was able to do with a particular group who did Protect the Protector was review the report. And it was use of force where you took a person down, or you thrust a person up against the wall. Where's that in your report? And by the way, it was about a few of their staff at the time. I said to them, all right, so you applied force. What did you say to them when you applied force? What gave you the authority? And actually, that's a question I asked. So you physically engaged this member of the public. Yes. What's your authority for that? A lot of them didn't know. So do you have a right to put your hands on me without telling me the context?
Right.
I don't, but you did. You did. And then what happened was a struggle. Where's that in your report? And then they tried to suggest that, there was an assault. Where? Where was there an assault? Well, when a person, he pushed me. Okay, play back the video. So now you just looked at the video. Where, and I'll slow it down. We did this during the session. Where does that person strike you? Oh, they didn't. So now you just lied to me? You know, this is under oath. That could be
Right.
significant misconduct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Steve, like, I don't think people ever factor or count on these small things that can get picked up. Like, we just talked about of a video that's surfacing right now of these two police officers.
Yeah.
One of them ends up giving the finger to the camera person,
Yes.
but they didn't realize it was a camera person because he was wearing Ray-Ban, the new Ray-Ban glasses that have video and photo embedded inside the frames.
Right.
The thing is that I think in the world of law enforcement, security, anything in the public service, I think everyone should, for the most part, just understand that we are always being watched. And when it comes time to, you can put any incident in your documentation. Just remember that if your stuff is not 100% accurate, there could be outside variables that could contradict what you're putting down.
Exactly. Great point. In that video that's just gone viral, you're quite right. We had two Toronto police officers, and what they did is, allegedly, you saw the officer communication, they didn't see the vehicle parked, but they parked in a prohibited area to go to a Starbucks and acquire coffee. And when they came out, they were called out on, oh, guys, you illegally parked to get a coffee. If that were me,
Right.
citizen, if that were me, you would have fined me. What's a fine for that? No one asked, sure. Well, I don't know. You write fines and you don't know what it is?
Right.
You're
right.
full of
Right,
crap.
exactly. Yeah.
And the young lady, the young female officer tried to start to say, well, bro, we work hard. We have right for caffeine too. Yeah, but illegally park?
Right.
I work hard too.
Right.
Why am I not given that credit? And you're using your position, your authority as a police officer to get what you want. Because you know a police officer's not going to tag a police car, but you
Right.
broke the law.
Right.
So stop right there, take a deep breath.
Right.
Sometimes I ask you a question out of curiosity, or I may have an agenda. But if your actions and your behaviors are pristine, supported, and authorized, it's pretty easy to defend. But off the record, and I shouldn't say that, but
Yeah.
off the record, like when you're trying to defend your actions and you have no defense, that becomes a problem,
Right. Right.
perceptually. Even.
Right.
And instead of saying to you, like if you caught me in a similar situation and you said, whoa, and I didn't know you weren't my colleague, I said, sir, you're right. You're right. I was wrong.
Right.
See, once you name that and you seize hold of that, and you
Yes.
grab that tag, it's hard to further accuse me.
That's right.
I've already conceded it.
Exactly.
And by the way, it won't happen again. You're quite right. And, sir, I apologize. Not
Right.
mockingly.
Right.
But that's one thing. So we all make mistakes. We all
Right.
make errors in judgment. We're
Right.
human beings. And by the way, I don't think it's a horrible sin to stop police officers to get a cup of coffee. And I'll leave that at that.
No, 100%.
But to try to back away from that,
Yeah.
especially when there's a valid complaint or something pointed out, that's the other issue.
Right.
And at the end of the day, to give you a finger, what's that indicative of? You know what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that something you'd expect a first responder or a police officer to parlay a message when they're wrong?
Right.
To remember the public pointing it out?
Absolutely.
Probably not.
So what's great about tying this into everything about reporting is it looked like at some point there was some reporting being done, right? And if nobody was factoring in that they were being recorded because they didn't know, if something is in your report right now not lined up to what actually happened, that's when issues can start happening. So
It could be, I'm not saying it will be, it could be deemed to be deceit. And because you're probably aware, similar to Sentinel, you have a requirement to provide full details, best of your ability, in your notebooks, your memorandum reports, capture all
right.
the details.
That's right.
Not just the ones you choose
That's
to
right.
record. And if I'm not going to account the fact that, well, I'm not going to put in a book, I give somebody a finger because that would be discreditable, probably weren't thinking you were being recorded at that point.
right, right.
And this could become an issue of content. Now, but am I suggesting that which should end a person's career? No, absolutely not. But be spoken to,
Right.
professional decorum. But specifically in terms of report writing, you don't have that opportunity to sometimes go back and say, well, yeah, but what I meant was,
Right.
excuse me, and other areas of behavior in terms of being a first responder with Sentinel would be your language.
No, that's good, Steve.
To be consistent with. If you're trying to physically control someone that's assaulting you, stop resisting, stop resisting. I want to say this professionally if I can, but at no point when I'm representing your firm shall I ever be portrayed to be a thug or inappropriate. That's what my language. If I'm swearing, if I'm cursing, if I'm calling you names, that may be indicative that I'm angry
Right.
and I'm treating you differently. And it might be easily argued being angry could be the reason why you've applied force on me. It's punitive. You're punishing me. You're teaching me a lesson. That might be argued. It may not be a fact. But a person generally is calm, cool, and collected. Even if you're not, it's usually identified through verbiage, what you say.
Right.
So if you are physically resisting me and I'm laughing and you keep hearing, sir, you're under arrest, I don't want to hurt you, please put your hand, there you go. Once you're handcuffed, are you okay? It's Constantine, right? Sir, are you okay? Do you understand what's going on? Sir, do you need any first aid? That's a level of conduct that's professional. And a lot of times we'll support an action that might even be challenged. I will share this with you. Up in Kenora, this trial I'm doing too, there is videotape surfaced with this arrest that led to the officer being charged with assault. The language being portrayed by the officer is hard to listen to.
Okay.
It's not racist,
Right.
but what it is, it's very, very rude, very ignorant. And that would certainly constitute discreditable conduct in terms of police services.
Right.
So that coupled with an act that's not been accurately recorded in your notebook could be a difficult uphill battle to defend.
No, absolutely. It starts painting a picture you don't want.
It paints a picture, well put. It paints a picture.
Right.
And I'll ask you, I'll put you on the spot because I do it all the time.
Yes.
When you have to CYA, which means
Yes.
can you articulate?
Right.
Yeah. Also, that would be the reason, the rationale behind your inappropriate language. If you have a person that's lost personal control of themselves to allow anger to seep through, you could get a different product. So if I do swear, I'm not saying I like to lynch myself, but if you were to put that on paper, imagine this, you read a report, lawful arrest, lawful ejection, inappropriate language, you've nailed it. How is that really going to impact on the allegation because you've already admitted it?
Interesting. Steve, I love that. We talked about an analogy of a movie that I watched, and I always reference it, and it's 8 Mile, where we talked about how in the story where Eminem is freestyling, he talks about he disses himself, he name calls himself, and when he's done doing that, his opponent doesn't have nothing to say, and he kind of drops the mic. And the thing is, because he admitted everything, and the reality is, Steve, it's such an incredible strategy. But to be honest and say, look, here's a situation. This is what happened. I acknowledged it. I saw it. It changes everything. It actually makes you, in my opinion, even more of someone that you'd be like, wow, like that person has great character. You know what I mean?
And accountability.
Right, exactly.
And I may not be proud, maybe I'm a proudest moment if I F-bombed a client of yours. But I came to you, it's actually gone through my report, and I apologize. For a brief moment, I lost, not physical control.
Right.
What I said was not respectful and beholding from your company. I accept that. It shan't happen again.
Right.
I doubt, even in terms of a disciplinary investigation, I've already stated it, I've earned it, I've accepted accountability. You probably don't have much more to add at that point.
Well, listen, if the starting point is, if you can't even acknowledge it, then that's the big issue. Because to me, it's like, wait a second, this is clearly wrong. The fact that you can't see that this is wrong, is now
becomes a larger issue than the issue we're talking about.
Exactly. Right. So to me, I think that's fantastic advice. So our people definitely got great benefit from this, and the intention right now is to continue rolling this around, because at the end of the day, Steve, as an organization where we deal with lawyers, we have lawyers that work for us that deal with situations.
Yes.
There's a cost to lawyers, and they're not, 27, 30, 40, 50 bucks an hour.
No, sir. Hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, hundreds of dollars an hour, and it adds up very quickly. So in order for us to ensure that we're not paying our dear lawyer friends, we need to make sure we have everything in order, and stuff like this is a very, very big, impactful start, Steve. So I want to thank you for kind of sharing that. Is there any last words you'd like to share just about anything to do with what we've talked about today?
Yeah, thank you. Just to capture it in totality, you gave your staff an opportunity to reflect on how they see things and how they communicate on paper. And that was given through various opportunities. And what I'm talking about is just certainly from powers of observation, how precise you might be, what you look for, other than just a brief glance. Secondly, we gave them an opportunity to review a piece of video and to capture on paper what they saw. That raised the bar. And any company looking at this training, it should be a triage of training. It should be the observation issues, it should be the documentation issues, and the third final portion of it should be the experience, the hands-on experience. That would be in a scenario that you're involved in. It's filmed. You have the opportunity to report it, document it, and then have a chance to be a recipient of questioning or cross-examination and like a discovery-like seminar. That will be a complete training process. You will have there a very well-groomed, well-articulated security professional, I think, working in any entity in this country, not just this province.
Okay, that's fantastic, man. I love that, Steve. And again, it's always amazing to see change. Like when change happens, it's like we start one way, we evolve into something else, and I'm very glad it's changing for the positive. Thank you so much for coming down today, Steve.
Thank you, Constantine. Stay safe, my friend.
100%. Have a great one, everyone. And
Cheers.
I'm going to say it again, stay safe. Thank you. Take care. Thank you for joining me in today's podcast. This podcast was created for protectors in the fields of law enforcement, executive protection, security, and anyone looking to level up their mindset. If you are learning from this podcast and you're enjoying it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Sentinel Mindset. That's a zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast both on Spotify and Apple. And on both Spotify and Apple, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. If you have questions for me or comments about the podcast or guests you would like me to consider on The Sentinel Mindset, please post all comments on YouTube. I do read all the comments. Please also check out our sponsors, thearenatoronto.com. The Arena was created to help all those in the fields of law enforcement, security, and all that achieve their fitness goals. I want to thank our producer Matthew Doyle and creative support Jaslyn Singh, who help me with this podcast every week. We value your feedback and are here to support you. Tune into the Sentinel Mindset every week where we look in the mirror to make real changes and explore what it takes to achieve greatness in your craft.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.